Bram Stoker, an Anglo-Irish author, was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1847. He worked as a civil servant in Dublin for a decade before moving to London in 1878. Stoker became the business manager of Henry Irving, a renowned actor who had taken over London's Lyceum Theatre. Stoker ventured into novel writing, starting with The Snake's Pass in 1890, and later authored several novels including The Mystery of the Sea, The Jewel of Seven Stars, The Lady of the Shroud, and The Lyre of the White Worm. Stoker's novels like Dracula blended elements of gothic horror and grotesque fantasy, but didn't attain the same lasting success. Dracula, written during a period of national anxiety in Britain, reflects a society worried about its vitality waning. Late Victorian era marked by both certainties and doubts in Britain. Britain experienced a surge in national confidence during this time. The British Empire expanded rapidly in the last quarter of the 19th century, contributing to this confidence. In 1897, Britain celebrated Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee, marking her 60th year of rule. At this time, Britain's global influence was at its peak, with control over a significant portion of the world's population and landmass, including territories acquired between 1884 and 1896. Despite its imperial might, concerns about vulnerability and signs of potential decline existed, especially due to resistance in Ireland, India, Africa, and competition from other Western nations like Germany and the United States. A major concern was a religious crisis fueled by industrialization and scientific advancements, leading to widespread religious skepticism in the late 19th century. Novelists, including Hall Caine, addressed this crisis, with Caine's novel The Christian gaining popularity. Caine was a friend of Bram Stoker, to whom Dracula is dedicated. Dracula, published in the same year, reflects the era's ambivalence towards the new secular outlook. It portrays a group of friends using modern science to combat the vampire threat, but ultimately resorting to religious symbols like the crucifix and host. The novel highlights the persistence of all traditions and powers that modernity cannot entirely eliminate. In Dracula, modern technology plays a significant role in the vampire hunter's arsenal, including the telegraph, phonograph, and typewriter. Dr. Seward keeps his journal on a phonograph that records his voice on wax cylinders. The typewriter, invented in the 1860s, came into widespread use in British businesses by the 1890s. Mina Murray, one of the novel's characters, uses a typewriter to efficiently collect and transcribe documents, marking the beginning of a new role for women in British society. The advent of the typewriter and other technologies offered women previously unavailable employment opportunities. Women skilled in shorthand and typing found work as secretaries in male-dominated offices, contributing to their financial independence. The emergence of the new woman in the late 19th century challenged traditional gender roles. The new woman was middle class, educated, sought sexual freedom, and supported women's suffrage. In Dracula, Mina, although ambivalent towards the new woman's radical values, showcases her abilities by acquiring secretarial skills to assist her husband's career. Cultural anxiety of the time was related to the fear that new opportunities for women might lead to neglecting their roles as mothers and a potential threat to national strength and security. The new woman was perceived as a threat to Britain's preeminence, both in terms of colonial resistance and demographic competition with other nations. Mina's character in the novel is seen as reassuring because she bears a British child and is prevented from assisting in reproducing the threatening outsiders, the vampires. Late Victorian society was marked by a growing skepticism towards previous scientific, religious, and social certainties. This skepticism led to a surge of interest in the occult as the century came to a close, as many individuals sought to reintroduce a sense of mystery into their lives in an era dominated by Victorian rationalism. Various occult practices gained popularity, including seances, clairvoyance, mesmerism, astrology, palmistry, crystal glazing, faith healing, alchemy, witchcraft, and astral projection. Clubs and societies were formed to explore occult ideas, often approaching them with a scientific attitude and a belief that occult phenomena could be scientifically explained. The Society for Psychical Research, for example, investigated phenomena like thought reading and haunted houses. Sigmund Freud's groundbreaking work in modern psychology was also of interest during this period, and Stoker incorporated contemporary ideas about mental illness into Dracula, drawing from figures like Jean-Martin Charcot, who worked with Freud in Paris and demonstrated the use of hypnosis in treating mental illness. The Theosophical Society, founded in 1875 by Helena Petrova Blavatsky, was one of the most influential occult groups. Blavatsky promoted mysticism and science as paths to enlightenment, attracting a diverse range of Victorian nonconformists, including feminists, socialists, and vegetarians. Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, had connections with members of the Theosophical Society, including Constance Wilde, wife of Oscar Wilde, who was a friend and rival of Stoker's. Oscar Wilde's own novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, published in 1890, also explored occult themes, featuring a character who gains eternal youth through supernatural means, similar to the themes in Dracula. Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, published in 1859, had a profound influence on the Victorian era by introducing the concept of evolution. Herbert Spencer and other British thinkers applied Darwin's ideas to the social realm, giving rise to social Darwinism, which justified social or political success based on inherent superiority. Imperial Victorians saw themselves at the top of the evolutionary ladder and believed in their inherent superiority. The concept of degeneration, the opposite of evolution, was a prevalent fear in the 1890s, as it implied a decline in racial vitality and social decline. Victorians associated bloodlines with racial vitality and believed that degeneration could result from moral laxness, indulgence, or simply aging. In Dracula, the foreign vampires draining of British blood symbolizes imperial fears of degeneration, as the vampire physically rejuvenates himself by draining British blood, highlighting the potential decline of those whose conquests are in the past, mirroring concerns about Britain and its empire in the 1890s. Phrenology was a pseudo-scientific discipline that believed character traits and mental qualities could be determined by the shape of the head or the dimensions of the brow. Phrenology was discredited over time, but had an influence on late Victorian criminology. Late Victorian criminologists claimed to use scientific methods to study criminals, including dissection, anatomy, and head observation. In Dracula, Mina Harkers refers to Cesare Lombroso, a notable criminologist of the time, when describing Count Dracula as a criminal type. The novel echoes Lombroso's description of the typical criminal when describing Count Dracula's characteristics. Count Dracula in Dracula was inspired by Vlad Tepes, a cruel Balkan nobleman known for impaling his enemies. He ruled Wallachia from 1456 to 1462 and was also called Vlad Dracula. The term Dracula means devil or dragon in Wallachian, and the novel implies that Dracula's powers are associated with the devil, or even suggests that he may be the devil himself. Another historical figure, Countess Elizabeth Bathory from 16th century Hungary, was infamous for killing young girls and bathing in their blood in a belief that it would rejuvenate her. Vampire legends have existed in various cultures throughout history, but the gruesome acts attributed to individuals like Bathory may have contributed to a wave of vampire sightings in Central Europe in the early 18th century. Bram Stoker drew inspiration for Dracula from various sources and literary contexts, including Central European vampire legends, historical figures like Vlad the Impaler and Elizabeth Bathory, and a body of existing vampire tales in English. English vampire tales that preceded Dracula include works from the Romantic movement, like Lord Byron's The Java, an occult narrative poem featuring a vampire emerging from its tomb to prey on humans. Dr. John Polidori's The Vampire, which features a seductive and aristocratic vampire inspired by Lord Byron himself, Polidori was Byron's physician and was present during the famous horror story contest in 1816, which also inspired Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. James Malcolm Rymer's Varney the Vampire, a lengthy and turgidly written work that introduced elements later borrowed by Stoker, such as Central European origins. Long canine teeth, a black clock climbing down castle walls, and arriving in Britain through a shipwrecked vessel. Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, which features a sensuous female vampire preying on female victims. These earlier works contributed to the development of vampire mythology and served as precursors to Stoker's Dracula, providing ideas and themes that Stoker incorporated into his own vampire narrative.